The Dominion had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Their warships were massive and powerful. Their armies had crushed 17 different alien species across the galaxy. Every world they found, they conquered. Every species they met, they enslaved. High Commander had led more invasions than he could remember, and not once had he tasted defeat. The universe belonged to and everyone knew it. So when the long-range sensors detected radio signals coming from a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, felt nothing but boredom. Another primitive world. Another easy victory. He ordered his fleet of 47 warships to change course. They would add this planet called Earth to their collection before the week ended. Captain Daniel Grant was drinking coffee on the bridge of the USS Horizon when everything changed. The Horizon was humanity's pride, the first ship capable of traveling to the outer edges of the solar system. Daniel had spent 15 years working toward this command. He was 42 years old, with gray starting to show at his temples and lines around his eyes from squinting at stars. His crew loved him because he treated them like family, not like soldiers. Lieutenant sat at the sensor station. She was young, only 28, with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than the ship's computers. When the first warning appeared on her screen, she thought it was a glitch. Then more warnings came. Then more. Her face went pale as she counted the contacts appearing from nowhere. "Captain," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We have incoming vessels, 47 of them. They just appeared out of nothing." Daniel set down his coffee. He walked to her station and looked at the screen. The ships were huge, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. They were arranged in a perfect formation, moving toward Earth with obvious purpose. Daniel said to his communications officer, "Open all channels. Let us see if they want to talk." Peters was a skinny man with nervous hands and a talent for languages. He worked his console quickly. "All channels open, sir." The alien message came seconds later. It broadcast on every frequency at once, overwhelming every radio and television on Earth. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated into English by some unknown technology. "Attention, primitive species. You are now subjects of the Dominion. Surrender your world and your people. Resistance will result in extermination. You have 1 hour to respond." The bridge went silent. Daniel looked at his crew. Navigation specialist Laura had stopped breathing. Engineer Cole gripped his console so hard his knuckles turned white, stared at her screen like she was hoping the ships would disappear. Daniel thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 12 years old and wanted to be an astronaut like her father. He thought about his wife, who had kissed him goodbye 3 months ago and told him to come home safe. He thought about the billions of people on that blue planet who had no idea their entire existence was about to change. He walked to the center of the bridge and stood tall. "Respond to their message." "Sir, what should I say?" Daniel looked out the viewport at the distant stars. "Tell them we decline their offer." Hesitated. "Sir, they have 47 warships. We have no weapons." "I know what we have," Daniel said quietly. "Send the message." High Commander received the human response with amusement. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused the initial demand. Most surrendered immediately. A few asked for terms, but outright refusal was new. He studied the tiny human ship on his display. It was laughably small, with no visible weapons and primitive technology. The beings inside must be either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Decided it did not matter which. "Destroy one of their orbital satellites," he ordered. "Show them what we can do." A single shot from his flagship turned a communications satellite into scattered debris. The explosion was visible from Earth. Within minutes, every news network on the planet was broadcasting the footage. Expected panic. He expected leaders to beg for mercy and populations to riot in fear. That was what always happened. Primitive species were predictable in their terror. What happened instead made no sense to him at all. On Earth, people watched the destruction of the satellite with shock. Then the shock became something else. In cities and towns and villages across the planet, humans looked at each other and felt something ancient wake up inside them. It was the same feeling their ancestors had felt when predators circled their camps in the darkness. It was the feeling that comes when running is not an option. World leaders who had been enemies for generations picked up phones and started talking. Generals who had planned to fight each other began planning together instead. Scientists shared secrets that governments had kept hidden for decades. Factories received new orders. Universities opened their vaults. An entire species that had spent centuries divided suddenly remembered they were all the same kind. On the horizon reported the changes happening on Earth. "Sir, I am picking up massive communications traffic. Every nation is talking to every other nation. Military forces are combining. Production facilities are converting. It is like the whole planet is waking up." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. They picked the wrong species to threaten. Watched his analysts try to explain what the humans were doing. Their reports made no sense. The primitive species was not surrendering. They were not even negotiating. They were preparing to fight. His chief, a creature named who had studied countless species, requested an audience. Granted it impatiently. "Commander," said carefully, "I believe we have made an error in our assessment." "Explain." "This species does not respond to threats the way others do. Our show of force was meant to create fear and submission. Instead, it appears to have created anger and unity. They are not becoming weaker under pressure. They are becoming stronger." Dismissed this with a wave of his claw. "They are primitives with crude technology. Strength means nothing without weapons." "Perhaps," said, "but I recommend caution. There is something unusual about these creatures, something we have not encountered before." Ignored the warning. He had conquered 17 species. He had burned worlds and broken civilizations. One small planet of soft-skinned primitives would not be different. He gave the order to prepare the ground invasion. The humans would learn their place soon enough. But deep in his chest, in a place he would never admit existed, High Commander felt something he had not felt in centuries. It was small and unfamiliar, like a whisper from a forgotten dream. It was doubt. The first soldiers landed in New York City on a Tuesday morning. They expected the streets to be empty. They expected the humans to hide in their homes and wait for capture. Their commanders had assured them this would be simple. The primitives had no real weapons and no training for war against a superior species. Sergeant First Class was 54 years old and had planned to retire next month. He had served in 3 wars and trained thousands of soldiers during his career. When the alien ships appeared in the sky, he canceled his retirement paperwork and reported for duty. They gave him a battlefield promotion to colonel and put him in charge of the city's defense. His second-in-command was Captain Price, a woman half his age with twice his energy. She had graduated top of her class from West Point and had never seen real combat until today. Now she stood beside on a rooftop watching drop ships descend through the clouds. "How many?" asked. Checked her tablet. "Sensors count about 2,000 ground troops in the first wave. They have armor and weapons we have never seen before." Nodded slowly. He had 40,000 defenders in the city, police officers, National Guard units, active military and volunteers who had shown up with hunting rifles and baseball bats. Against alien technology, numbers might not mean much, but they were all he had. "Tell everyone to hold their positions," he said. "Let them come to us." The soldiers marched through the streets in perfect formation. They were tall creatures, covered in gray armored scales, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed faint yellow. Their weapons hummed with energy that could vaporize concrete. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could hurt them. The first shot came from an apartment window on the 3rd floor. An old woman named Clark, 72 years old and angry as hell, fired her late husband's shotgun at the lead alien. The blast hit the creature's armor and did nothing. The soldier looked up at the window with what might have been confusion. Then every window on the block opened up. Bullets rained down from above. Most of them bounced off alien armor, but a few found gaps. 2 soldiers fell. The aliens returned fire. The building's front wall exploded. Clark died instantly, but her neighbors kept shooting from other windows, other buildings, other streets. The commander on the ground reported back to his ship in orbit. "We are encountering resistance." "Crush it," came the reply. "They are primitives." "Commander, they are everywhere. Every building contains hostiles. Every street is contested. We have taken casualties." There was silence on the channel. They had not taken casualties in a ground assault for over 500 years. The battle for New York lasted 18 days. They had superior weapons and armor. The humans had something else. They had rage, and they had creativity, and they had an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Construction workers turned cranes into weapons, dropping steel beams on alien formations. Subway workers flooded tunnels with trains running at full speed into enemy positions. Teachers led students through evacuation routes while staying behind to throw Molotov cocktails at advancing soldiers. Restaurant owners boiled oil and poured it from rooftops. Directed the defense from a basement command center. He slept 2 hours a night and ate when forced food into his hands. He lost count of how many soldiers he sent to their deaths, but for every human who fell, another took their place. Volunteers came from across the country. Some walked for days to reach the city. On the 17th day, a young man named Chris Palmer crawled through a sewer pipe with 20 pounds of homemade explosives strapped to his back. He was 19 years old and had been studying to be a veterinarian before the invasion. He found the underground power cables that fed the alien forward base and set his charges carefully. The explosion killed him instantly. It also killed power to the alien shields for 6 precious minutes, launched everything he had in those 6 minutes. 300 alien soldiers died before the shields came back online. High Commander watched the reports from orbit with growing disbelief. His analysts showed him the casualty figures: 400 soldiers dead, 2,000 wounded. The humans had lost far more, nearly 30,000 defenders, but they kept fighting. "This is not possible," said. "They cannot win. They must know they cannot win." The stood nearby studying the same data. "They know, Commander. They simply do not care." "That makes no sense. All species prioritize survival. It is the fundamental drive of all life." "Most species, yes. But these humans seem to value something more than individual survival. They fight for each other. They die for strangers. A creature will sacrifice itself so others might live a few hours longer." Shook his head. "Madness." "Perhaps, or perhaps something we have forgotten. Commander, may I speak freely?" Waived permission. "We have conquered 17 species because they all made the same choice. When faced with certain death, they chose survival under our rule. It was logical. It was reasonable. But these humans do not seem to operate on logic alone. They are driven by something else, something irrational and powerful." "What?" Considered the question carefully. "I believe they call it hope. The belief that things can get better, even when all evidence says otherwise. It makes them unpredictable. It makes them dangerous." Ordered more troops sent to the surface. Then more. Then more. Each wave pushed the humans back, but each wave cost more lives than the last. The humans learned from every engagement. They adapted their tactics. They found weaknesses in alien armor and exploited them. They turned the city itself into a weapon. On the 18th day, led a counterattack that drove the aliens back 3 blocks. It was a tiny victory in a losing war, but it was a victory. His soldiers cheered. People watching from around the world cheered. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity allowed itself to believe that maybe, just maybe, They were not going to die quietly. They pulled back from New York to reassess their strategy. They had expected to conquer the planet in a week. 3 weeks later, they held only small sections of a single city. Was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's combined defense forces. Price became his chief of operations. Together, they began planning something no one had attempted before. They were going to take the war to space. The captured shuttle sat in a hangar beneath a mountain in Colorado. Armed guards surrounded it day and night, though the alien pilot inside had died during the crash. Doctor walked around the craft slowly, touching the smooth metal hull with something close to reverence. Was 38 years old and had spent his career studying theoretical physics at a university where no one listened to his ideas. Now, he led a team of 200 scientists from every country on Earth. They had one job: figure out how the alien technology worked and find a way to copy it. Across the hangar, Dr. Maria Santos ran her fingers over a power cell. Maria was from Brazil, an engineer who had designed power plants before the invasion. She had not slept in 4 days. None of them had. "The energy density is impossible," she muttered. "By our physics, this should not exist." Joined her, "Then our physics is incomplete. We need to learn their physics." The work continued around the clock. Scientists argued and theorized and tested. They burned through equipment and funding at rates that would have been unthinkable before the war. But money did not matter anymore. Patents did not matter. National pride did not matter. Only survival mattered. 3 weeks after capturing the shuttle, S team achieved their first breakthrough. They understood how they created artificial gravity. 2 days later, Maria's team cracked the basic principles of their shield technology. The pieces began fitting together. In orbit, Admiral watched the fleet with growing frustration. He had ships now, dozens of them, hastily converted cargo vessels and passenger liners armed with whatever weapons humanity could produce. But they were toys compared to the alien warships. Every engagement ended in retreat. "We need better weapons," he told during a strategy meeting. "We need shields. We need to match their technology or we will never win." Pulled up a report from the Colorado facility. "The scientists say they are close. They think they can build a hybrid ship, human design with alien power systems." "How long?" "3 months. Shook his head. "We do not have 3 months. They are regrouping. When they attack again, it will be with everything they have." Leaned forward. "Then we buy them time. We hit the aliens where they do not expect it. We make them cautious. We slow them down." Considered this. "We would lose ships. We would lose people." "Yes, but if we do nothing, we lose everything." The first human raid against the fleet happened 2 days later. A squadron of 15 ships, led by Commander, emerged from behind the moon and attacked a supply convoy. They were 10 to 1. They did not care. Was 41 years old and had been a commercial pilot before the invasion. He flew cargo planes between continents, dreaming of something more exciting. Now he commanded the USS Defiant, a converted freighter with welded-on armor and weapons pulled from scrapped fighter jets. It was ugly and slow and barely held together. He loved it. "All ships target the convoy escorts first," he ordered over the radio. "Hit them hard and fast. Do not let them organize." The human ships dove into the formation. They fired everything they had: missiles and bullets and improvised plasma weapons that team had built from captured technology. Most shots bounced off alien shields, but some got through. A escort ship exploded, then another. The convoy scattered in confusion. "Press the attack," shouted. "They are running." The battle lasted 11 minutes. The humans destroyed 3 enemy ships and damaged 4 more. They lost 7 of their own, including 218 crew members. But they captured a cargo vessel filled with weapons and technology. Limped back to Earth with his surviving ships. When he docked at the orbital station, Admiral was waiting for him. That was reckless, said. Yes, sir. That was exactly what we needed. The captured cargo gave Team months of new material to study. They worked even faster now, driven by the knowledge that every day they delayed cost human lives. Maria had a breakthrough with the propulsion systems. A young physicist from Japan named Koji figured out the communication encryption. A German engineer named Anna solved the weapons targeting problem. Piece by piece, humanity rebuilt itself. The first true human warship launched 4 months after the invasion began. They called it the USS Phoenix because it rose from the ashes of everything that had destroyed. It was smaller than an alien cruiser but faster. Its shields were not as strong, but they were strong enough. Its weapons were a hybrid of human and alien technology, designed to exploit weaknesses that they did not know they had. And Maria stood in mission control as the Phoenix completed its first test flight. They held hands without realizing it, two scientists who had become something more during the endless nights of work and worry. We did it, Maria whispered. No, said, we gave them a chance. Now the soldiers have to do the rest. Commander transferred to the Phoenix as its captain. He took his surviving crew with him, the men and women who had fought beside him in that first desperate raid. They were not the same people anymore. War had hardened them into something new. High Commander received reports of the new human warship with concern. His analysts could not explain how the primitives had advanced so quickly. They should have needed decades to understand technology. Instead, they had done it in months. They learn too fast, warned him. Every day they become more dangerous. If we wait much longer, they may become impossible to defeat. Made his decision. He would gather every ship he could spare and launch a final assault on Earth. He would burn the planet to glass if necessary. The humans had to be stopped before they spread beyond their home system. He sent a message to the Dominion requesting reinforcements. The response came back quickly and firmly. No reinforcements would be sent. The Dominion Council believed was exaggerating the threat. One primitive species could not possibly be causing so much trouble. Read the message 3 times. Then he began planning the largest invasion fleet in history, 400 warships against one small planet. He would end this himself. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of metal and fire. 400 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet in the distance. Today, he would finish what he had started 8 months ago. Admiral watched the enemy fleet on the main display of the orbital command station. Beside him, Price counted ships with steady hands. 412 vessels confirmed, she reported, including flagship. This is everything they have in this sector. Then they are betting everything on one attack. Turned to his communications officer. Get me Captain Grant. Daniel Grant had changed since the day the aliens first arrived. He was leaner now, harder. The explorer who had wanted to study stars had become a warrior who fought beneath them. He commanded the USS Pioneer, humanity's largest carrier, capable of launching 60 fighter craft. Admiral, Daniel said over the video link, we are ready. How many ships do we have? 52 combat vessels, 300 fighters, 27,000 crew members. 52 against 400. The numbers were still terrible, but they were better than they had been 8 months ago, when humanity had faced the same fleet with no ships at all. You know the plan, said. Everything depends on surprising them. If they figure out what we are doing, this is over. Daniel nodded. They will not figure it out. They think they know how we fight. They are wrong. The human fleet gathered behind Mars, hidden from sensors by the planet's mass. Commanders held final briefings with their crews. Engineers checked weapons one last time. Pilots said goodbye to friends and family through video messages that might be the last they ever sent. Lieutenant, now Commander, and Daniel's second in command on the Pioneer walked through the carrier's corridors. She stopped to speak with young pilots, many of them barely 20 years old. She told them they were brave. She told them humanity was proud of them. She did not tell them how many of them would die today. "You scared?" Daniel asked her when she returned to the bridge. "Terrified," she admitted. "You?" "Same, but I was scared on that first day too, when it was just the horizon against 47 warships. Fear does not mean you stop. It means you keep going anyway." The fleet advanced toward Earth in a standard conquest formation. Had used this formation 100 times before. Heavy ships in the center, escorts on the flanks, fighters screening ahead. It was designed to overwhelm defenders with superior firepower. It had never failed. He expected the humans to form a defensive line in orbit. He expected them to try to protect their planet with everything they had. That was what every species did. They clung to there until the end. The humans did not form a defensive line. Instead, they came screaming out from behind Mars at full speed, heading straight for the heart of the formation. Stared at his tactical display in confusion. What are they doing? His tactical officer had no answer. They appear to be attacking us directly, Commander. That is suicide. They are outnumbered 8 to 1. Yes, Commander. But the humans kept coming. Their ships were faster than the expected, powered by hybrid engines that combined human innovation with captured alien technology. They hit the forward screen of fighters and tore through it like a knife through paper. "All ships engage," ordered. "Destroy them." The Battle of Earth had begun. Captain Grant led the first wave personally, guiding the Pioneer into the gap his fighters created. Enemy fire streaked past the viewport, missing by meters. An explosion to port told him one of his escorts had died. He pushed the thought away and focused on the mission. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "Take out their coordination." The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one diving into the formation from a different angle. It was chaos by design. The aliens were used to fighting enemies who held formation and followed predictable patterns. Humanity fought like wolves in a flock of sheep, striking and retreating and striking again. Commander brought the Phoenix into the middle of the enemy fleet, her shields flashing as she absorbed hit after hit. His weapons officer, a woman named Sandra Cole who had been Cole's sister, fired with mechanical precision. "Cruiser down," she reported, "targeting next vessel." "Keep firing until we run out of targets or ammunition," said, "whichever comes first." The battle lasted 11 hours. Human ships died by the dozens, torn apart by superior firepower. But for every human ship that fell, they took 2 or 3 enemies with them. The aliens had never fought like this. They did not know how to respond to an enemy that refused to retreat. 6 hours into the battle, the Phoenix took a direct hit to her engine section. The ship shuddered and began to drift. Ordered his crew to abandon ship, watching the escape pods launch one by one. "Captain, your pod is ready," Sandra told him. 1 minute. Walked to the navigation console and input a final course. The Phoenix still had power to her main thrusters. She could still move. He aimed her at the nearest dreadnought and pushed the engines to maximum. "Sir, what are you doing?" "Getting my money's worth out of this ship." He activated the autopilot and ran for the escape pod. He made it with seconds to spare. The Phoenix slammed into the dreadnought at full speed. Both ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. 8 hours into the battle, the humans were losing. They had destroyed over 100 enemy ships, but they had lost 34 of their own. The still outnumbered them 5 to 1, ordered his fleet to press forward, sensing victory. Then Admiral played his final card. 40 reserve ships, hidden in the asteroid belt for months, emerged behind the fleet. They were crewed by volunteers, many of them elderly veterans who had insisted on fighting one last time. They hit the alien rear with everything they had. The formation broke. Ships that had been pursuing the main human fleet turned to face the new threat. Coordination collapsed. Captains made their own decisions, and those decisions were often wrong. Daniel Grant saw the gap and took it. All ships target the flagship, everything we have right now. 100 human fighters and 18 surviving warships focused their fire on a single point. Its flagship, the pride of the fleet, shuddered under the assault. Its shields flickered and failed. The final missile came from its personal fighter. She had transferred from the Pioneer when the carrier took heavy damage, refusing to sit out the battle. Her missile struck the flagship's reactor core. High Commander had 1 second to realize he had lost before his ship exploded around him. The surviving ships fled. They scattered in every direction, jumping to hyperspace without waiting for orders. The Battle of Earth was over. Humanity had won. The news of the defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Ships carried the story from system to system, station to station, world to world. A primitive species from an unremarkable planet had done the impossible. They had broken the mightiest military force in known space. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. 47 species sent representatives to the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral station called Nexus Prime. They came to discuss the humans. They came because they were afraid. Ambassador Grace Mitchell arrived at Nexus Prime aboard a small diplomatic vessel 3 months after the Battle of Earth. She was 51 years old, with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too much in the past year. Before the invasion, she had been a high school teacher in Ohio, teaching history to teenagers who thought they would never use it. Now she represented her entire species to beings from across the stars. The council chamber was enormous, a sphere of floating platforms where representatives sat according to their species status. The platform was empty. No one had heard from the Dominion since the battle. Rumors said their empire was collapsing, other conquered species rising up now that they knew the masters could be beaten. Grace took her place on a small platform near the bottom of the chamber. Humanity was new here. They had not earned a higher position yet. The council speaker, a tall being with silver skin and 4 eyes, called for order. "We are gathered to discuss the species known as humans from the planet Earth. They have requested membership in the Galactic Council. Before we vote, we must hear from them directly." Grace's platform rose to the center of the chamber. She looked around at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some were curious, some were hostile, many were simply scared. She thought about what she wanted to say. She had prepared speeches, practiced diplomatic phrases, memorized protocols. But standing here, looking at all these beings who had watched the conquer without lifting a finger to help, she decided to throw all that away. "My name is Grace Mitchell," she began. 9 months ago, I was teaching children about history. Now I am here, speaking for 8 billion people who almost died because the galaxy decided we were not worth saving. The chamber went silent. This was not how diplomatic addresses usually began. They gave us a choice: surrender or die. Every species before us chose surrender. You all watched. You all knew what they were doing, and you all decided it was not your problem. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others looked away. We did not surrender. We fought with everything we had, which was almost nothing. We lost millions of people, soldiers and scientists and teachers and children. We lost cities and resources and years of progress, but we did not lose ourselves. Grace paused, letting the words sink in. You want to know what makes humans different. You want to understand how we won when no one else could. The answer is simple. We refused to accept that losing was inevitable. We refused to believe that just because something had always been true, it would always be true. We looked at the impossible and said we would do it anyway. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many delegates as she could. Some of you are afraid of us now. I understand that. We proved that the old rules do not apply to us. We changed the balance of power that has existed for 3,000 years. That is frightening." Grace smiled slightly. "But we did not fight because we wanted power. We fought because they gave us no choice. We are not conquerors. We are not monsters. We are just people who wanted to survive." She took a breath. "We are asking to join this council not because we want to dominate it, but because we want to be part of something larger than ourselves. We have seen what happens when species stand alone against tyranny. We have also seen what happens when people work together against impossible odds." Her voice softened. "Before the invasion, humanity was divided. We fought among ourselves over borders and resources and ideas. They gave us a common enemy. They forced us to remember that we are one species, one family. That unity saved us." Grace looked up at the highest platforms, where the oldest and most powerful species sat. "We offer that same unity to you, not as subjects or masters but as partners. They are broken, but they are not gone. Other threats will come. When they do, we would rather face them together than alone." She lowered her platform back to its starting position. "That is all I have to say." The vote happened 3 hours later. 39 species voted to accept humanity into the Galactic Council. 8 abstained. None voted against. The years that followed changed the galaxy forever. Human ships explored regions that other species had been too cautious to enter. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers to develop technologies neither could have created alone. Human diplomats mediated disputes that had festered for centuries. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Some species resented the newcomers who had risen so fast. Others tried to use humanity's reputation for their own purposes, starting conflicts they expected humans to finish. But humanity had learned something during the war. They had learned that strength without wisdom was just destruction. They had learned that courage without compassion was just violence. They used their power carefully, always remembering what it had cost them. Captain Daniel Grant retired to a small house by the ocean, where he could watch ships rise into the sky and disappear among the stars. He wrote his memoirs and refused most interviews. When young officers asked him for advice, he always said the same thing: "Never fight a battle you can avoid. But if you have to fight, fight with everything you have and never stop until it is over." Commander took command of the Pioneer after Daniel left. She led humanity's first expedition beyond the known galaxy, searching for new worlds and new species. She sent messages back to Earth describing wonders that no human had ever seen. Admiral died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72, surrounded by his family and the medals he had never wanted. His funeral was broadcast across the planet. 3 billion people watched. Dr. and Dr. Maria Santos got married in a small ceremony on the moon, the Earth glowing blue and beautiful in the sky above them. They continued their research together, making discoveries that changed what humanity thought was possible. And in the archives of the Galactic Council, under the entry for the species known as humans, someone added a note that would be read by beings for thousands of years to come. Classification: allies. Temperament: peaceful and less provoked. Warning: do not provoke. They were ready for battle. They were not ready for humans. Neither was anyone else. Grace Mitchell read that entry once, years after her speech to the council. She was old by then, her hair fully white and her hands spotted with age. She laughed softly and closed the file. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or domination, but through stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They had proven something that the galaxy had forgotten over: of submission to the strong. Sometimes the small and weak could stand against the powerful. Sometimes courage mattered more than weapons. Sometimes hope was enough. The universe had learned to respect humans. More importantly, humans had learned to respect themselves. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between stars, the story passed from species to species, growing with each telling. The story of a primitive people who looked at the mightiest empire in the galaxy and said no. the story of how humanity refused to lose.